Hello guys, welcome to the 10th episode of Lumion 10 tutorial. In this episode, we'll work on one of the scenes that we've worked on previously together a couple of times. For example, this one. Let's load it. And as you have this file, you can repeat the same process with me. So we'll load this scene, and as you can see, this is a scene that we've worked on previously, and we want to learn new things inside this scene. So I placed a little more objects in this one. A little photorealistic trees, some bushes and greenery, and these are small details that you add to your project. It will help your project to be more photorealistic and more natural. So I will try to use some of these bushes because they will give us a good feel of depth in our render. So we'll try to use them a little in my landscape. Let's add some more in the lower part of the page. We need to be careful so they don't block our view, and it's not creating a problem for our render shot. Because the height of this plant is a little high. Let's add some more trees to show trees in background and have some more trees as well. And as you can see, we need to go back a little bit and then zoom in order to get a good view from the building in my perspective. And the plants that we just did are not placed good. So for now we have this. We take a shot, and compared to this shot, we will place some greenery at front of the building, or move some of these plants. This is one of the techniques, and it's not necessarily the only way to do it, but for sure it's one of them to help you to get a good outcome. And consider to your render, you can just place your greenery. Let's use some fine detailed tree inside our environment. The trees that we put here, maybe they don't even get into the shot, but they will help you to have a better render with the shadow or the reflection on the window. Let's go back to the photo and click on it to see how it is now. Here, without any effect, we have that. In effects, we activate camera to point. This one will remove the perspective for you guys. I will try to get closer to the sleeves, so when I want to get a depth of field, it will help us, like that. Again, I will try to move this tree a little closer. So we can see the leaves inside of the picture. I think it's fairly okay now. So I will do a render test now. The angle is okay. We just need to add some details to this render. One of the aspects that makes the render much more beautiful is the sky. We can move the camera a little lower to show more sky. This part could be good, or we could zoom out a little bit to have more details. Let's change this tree that is close to us, so it will give us a better result. Let's clear this collection in front of the picture. Because it's close to the camera, I'm going to use Fine Detail Object to enhance the outcome. We could even use Fine Detail Bush here as well. Let's go back to our render shot to see how it is now. Let's bring down the camera a little bit. This place is okay. I like to keep the line of this part inside our shot. So pay attention, I want to add some birds inside my shot. Let's zoom out a little bit to show more detail from the environment. Let's move this fine detail tree a little further so we can use the leaves inside our shot. We could check the grass and environment to see how it is. And as you can see, I'm using two layers. The lower layer is grass and the upper layer is our soil. This is for the time that we can mix them together. So if we lower the height of our grass, we can show a little bit of soil and the ground. Then it will look much more realistic. Let's test for now to see which one will look better. Well, it seemed that it's okay. In custom style, let's choose realistic. And one of the most important part that we have here, which is not only that you need to choose a good sky for yourself, one of the most important aspects in your render, not if the most, is the angle of the sun. So we have this angle which we have shadow and have a shadow inside our render. Let's change the light later on, but for now let's add some birds inside our shot. In object, from people and animal, let's choose some birds that are flying. We'll try not to add some huge birds. As you can see, it shows the edges and you can just place on the edges, and it shows the height of the bird. So we can place some here, and they are just running around in that area. We could even move them a little higher. And there is one important thing, that in our render, when we go here, it doesn't even show the birds. And we need to choose time breath in effects and animation. And we need to define where they need to be. So this is fine, and we can place it here, or we can move them around to see which place is better. You could test your render to see how it is now. And as you can see some boldness on the ground, and you can see the soil. And the mixture looks really natural here. Let's change to real sky to achieve what we want. Well, I like to keep some shadows on the building, so it looks more natural, and it gives a little depth to the design. One of the important things that we have here, as you can see, this fine detail plants that we have here gives a very good look to the shot. I will remove some of these plants to lower the diversity between plants. So from this part and from fine detail, we choose some bush that got flower on them. We place them inside our environment. and these will give you a good detail to your shot. As you can see, we go back, they can give us a good detail. So I think if we move back to grass and heighten the height, it could be a little better. So let's go back to our render environment. And one of the important things that needs to be paid attention to now is the reflection on the glass. But as we know on the previous episodes, reflection will put a heavy load on GPU, but it will give us a very good result. So let's change and check the angle light, do some changes, and then we move to reflections. So we've shown this light, and effects and advanced, we have reflection. You click on them, and from this part, and as we talked about it before, we need to choose each surface that we want to have a reflection on. We press OK, we press hide, and now we have a decent reflection on the glass. I wouldn't mind to reflect some heavy light from inside of our building, underneath this ceiling. So we have a light in this two interior area. And in order to use light, my preference in order to use light is area light, which will give you light as a surface. And the shadow that this one will give you is a softer shadow. Increase the size and move the color to yellow-ish. Now let's see if the amount of light that we have here is good for us. As you can see, we have a light over here. And I think it's a good boost for our render. And we can add a light in this part as well, like the one before, so we enhance the result. We go back to build, and the light that we selected there, we just move, and because I'm in the light tab, we just need to select it there. We need to go inside the building and replace it here. So it will increase the light as a part of the building. Let's move it inside a little bit so we can see the result on the interior wall as well. Let's check to see the result. I think the result is not too shabby. And as you can see here, we have a good light and a little bit inside. Let's take a render test to see how it is. And as you can see, because of the large amount of reflections that we have and fine detailed trees that we use, the file is heavy, but it's a size for your rendering. In order to control that, we temporarily disable reflection so we can move around inside our area. Now I will activate my depth of field to give it a little depth, but I like the details in front of the image, and we use it just a little. Some people like to make it look like this, and it's a good amount, but for now I prefer to give the blur and the focus not that much, and just a little. And now let's go and activate the shadow. And in shadow, you'll determine the range of the shadow that is being created by sun, which how much we have shadows, and what is the color of the shadow, if it's warm, if it's light. I prefer to keep it cold here, or have bright shadows or darker shadows. Let's check bright now to see how it will be. It's a little too bright, and I prefer to make it a little darker, but not too dark. We choose the environment as exterior, and as you can see, it makes it colder because the shadows in exterior are usually colder. And on the shadow is the ambient that we usually use in 3D Max, which the corners will show darker, and in the places that surfaces are meeting each other, it will be darker. The environment will show itself a little better. Let's make it a little lighter. And with shadow correction, you can change the placement of the shadow to correct it and have your preferred angle. And you can use ultra sharp shadow, and in this one, shadows will be very edgy. And usually in renders that we want to have high quality, we use soft shadow. In soft shadow, when we have our light as the sun and our environment is big, the shadow will happen softly and it will not have too much edges. And if you activate this one, automatically you cannot place it on ultra sharp. You need to place it on normal and then activate this one. You go back and we got a good experience right there. One thing that we worked on in previous episode was color correction. To change the colors here, I like the temperature to be a little colder. And tint, we could make it a little green or even 0. We don't want our vibrance to be too much. Let's add a little contrast to it. And in saturation, maybe we can reduce the colors a little bit. We go back, but before we get our render in weather, let's choose precipitation, which we've talked about it before. We don't want to add rain, but we want to increase the moisture on the ground. Let's go back to advanced. Oh, we didn't need to go there, we just need to go in FX. We go to preset and we activate reflection and we get our render, but we get it in two different modes. One with this one and another one with another angle. And Full HD is a good size and you don't need to change it. And in desktop you can fill an A3 paper, print will fill on A2 paper, and in poster the size of the image will be very large. We save it in desktop for now. With the name of section number 10. And as you can see, we have our render here. Let's capture this render with another light angle. So the only thing that we do is in real sky, maybe you don't even change the sky. But don't forget one thing. When you use rain or snow, remove a straw fog addition because it will remove your sky and block your sky. It will create an kind of unpleasant result. We choose our sky and let's change the angle. The reason that our environment is too heavy, it's because of the reflections. And you have it on high. So let's capture it again with this light angle. Let's change it a little bit here. Yeah, I like that. Let's capture next render to see with just a small adjustment in light how different it will be. And as you can see, we've got our next render. Let's go to desktop to see how different they are. This is our first render and the other one is the second render. And in my opinion, one of the important aspects in this type of programs is a small adjustment in lighting can give you a much different result. And as you can see on the previous one, focus is on the greenery, and then the next one and this one, the focus is on the building. And if you know Photoshop, with a very simple filter in Photoshop, we can do the same thing. But the filter that I want to show you guys, I will explain it in this episode. So from now on, when you're capturing a render, represent it differently. And as you can see, we've entered a file in Photoshop. Make a copy from the file with Ctrl+J for you just to compare before and after. In filter, we activate camera raw We zoom in with Ctrl+, change the light here, change the contrast to see what will be good for our design. In highlights, I prefer to make it a little lower to have better sky, as it seems if you make it lower, the sky will be much better. And the shadows, we can choose if you want darker shadows or lighter shadows. And white and black, we can make the white to be whiter and black to be more darker. And in texture and clarity, if you increase texture, it will increase the amount of detail in your design. And usually you should do this below number 10. So like 6 and 7 is good. Here it will add some fog, and as you can see, sometimes a foggy area could be good. So we have vibrance here as well, and here we can increase or reduce the amount of color. We can increase the amount of color and reduce the saturation. So from tone curve, here we can change highlights, but this time the result will be a little different. We can change the dark here, make the shadows lighter or darker again. Let's go in Detail tab to increase the sharpness. And do a little noise reduction. And in here in saturation, we can reduce or increase green, or make the green to yellowish. And as you can see, you can just move around and change the settings to get the result that you want. In saturation, you can increase the blue a little bit, just a small amount of detail. In luminance, we can say if you want to glow it or not. To increase the light of these colors. Same thing for sky and other areas. Or we can even reduce the light in the sky, so it's more visible. So in lens correction, we make the edges a little darker. In FX, we do the same thing, and we press OK. I just want you to see before and after, at how much changes we just had. So this is a very good shot and very rendered, and you can easily represent this to your employee. We can also crop it with a different setting. The original that is, it's not so nice. And if we change it just by the eye, be careful with the golden points, so your building is not out of focus. Let's check to see if this one is better or the previous one. I think the cropped version will provide us with a better result. Let's save it and call this version number 11, which we have the previous file and the new one. Look. So we review the result together, and this is a good render. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and be well.